Let me just welcome everybody this evening. We so appreciate your joining us, and we have a nice and interesting group tonight. Sorry, I want to start by introducing our staff. I think most of you are familiar with us, but we have Angela and Eric up in the left-hand corner there. Eric's our tech guru that makes this all happen for us. And then Lynn is right below me. And Debbie is right below her, Debbie Kellogg. And then Tracy is to the left. And Angela up in the corner there is my partner in crime since about 1978. So from that, I'm going to introduce Undra and Jalsa, who are two of the kindest, most interesting people. And you know, we meet a lot of people at Virtuoso Week and as we travel around the world, but these two will mesmerize you, and we're so lucky to have them with us today. Undra is the president of Nomadic Expeditions and started her education in the Ural State College in Russia and international affairs, and then finished it off at California State with a master's degree. So she's got us covered internationally as well as Mongolia. And Jalsa came or was here since 1952. His parents immigrated from Russia. And at one point, some years ago, as Mongolia began to open up to the world, he was asked to help introduce the world to Mongolia. And he's done such a great job that since 1992, he's had nomadic expeditions fine-tuned and taking thousands of people to his native country of Mongolia and showing them the best way to experience it. So with that, I'm going to turn, one last thing I want to say about them is that they are so into sustainable travel. And that is a passion with our company as well. We just love the fact that as the world reopens, we're going to be able to show it to you in an ever more sustainable and interesting, engaging way. So I know everybody's going to benefit from that. With that, I will turn it over to Undra and Jalsa.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I'm thrilled to be here along with Jalsa, who founded the company almost 30 years ago. And I believe, we met several years ago, of course, Angie, Angela, and Eric, and probably started talking about trips to Mongolia at least 3-4 years ago, and working on the itinerary and what would be the best experience. And I think 2020 is the year we feel that we're ready to go finally. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Angie. I did study international relations, and actually I was thinking that I'm going to go work for a nonprofit organization to work on developmental issues in Mongolia, and then ended up actually working for a travel company to do good. So it's kind of worked out that way. And Delphi, would you like to say a couple words before I kind of share the screen?
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and certainly a pleasure to see everyone from Wallace Pearson Travel Collected. The last time we met, we were at a nice party we had at Virtuoso Travel Week. And again, that's where the idea incubated and started. Undra is very modest. She studied in 3 countries. She started in Mongolia, and then she got her undergraduate in Russia, as Angie said. But then she would spend she went to Cal State Sacramento to get her master's degree in international relations, but would spend her summers going back to help her 68-year-old grandmother herd her sheep and goats. So she's quite a special person. She's only been with us a short time, about 16 years now, and she became president several years ago. But it's really a thrill to be here. I grew up in the first Mongolian community in America, and it was about 280 Mongolians settled in the middle of New Jersey in 1952. And I grew up listening to stories about, I'm the only one in my family actually that was born in the US, but my parents again fled from Stalin and Hitler and made it to America. And, you know, it's been an amazing thing to be able to go to Mongolia when it became a democracy in 1990. We had contact with their only presence in New York at the United Nations. But when they became a democracy and a peaceful revolution in 1990, the first Democratic Prime Minister who I hosted in our community became Prime Minister after he went back to Mongolia. So that's how I started to my relationship officially with them. And we've been promoting travel to Mongolia ever since. I grew up as a carpenter, and I've been very fortunate in life, and this is part of giving back. As Angie mentioned, sustainability is at the core. When you see the nomadic way of life and how people live in harmony with nature, it's an amazing thing. Living in what we call guerras, which are in the West are known as yurts, moving their herds and their homes 3 or 4 times a year for their summer pastures, winter pastures. It's an amazing thing. It's being able to be immersed in a culture and then go back in time, because they're living essentially the same way as they did thousands of years ago, 1,000 years ago plus. And you know, in Mongolia we have a little over 3 million people, and we have about 4.5 million horses. And so, you know, horses are a part of our whole culture. So it's just an amazing thing. We actually have about 50 million domesticated livestock and only 3 million people. But it's just a wonderful experience. So Undra will guide you through the itinerary she's crafted and that I've reviewed, and certainly there are many highlights along the way.
So we come up with this itinerary to really share the highlights of Mongolia from the cultural perspective, also from historical perspective. So on this trip, we have next June, June 17th to 27th, we're visiting 2 distinctly different regions within Mongolia. The first region we focus on is the Karakoram, which is really the cultural heart of Mongolia, with some of the oldest monasteries and monks practicing Tibetan Buddhism. And then we go down from the central Mongolia, essentially, to the southern part of the country where the Gobi Desert is located. So, you know, we really on this trip doing an overland expedition to explore the countryside of Mongolia. And Mongolia is a vast country, and one of the best ways really to see the country, meet the local people, is exploring the countryside by overland. So our itinerary really, you know, takes us from Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital city, to the central part of Mongolia, which is a beautiful area with grasslands and rolling steppes, so-called Karakoram. And from this area, we drive overland to explore the main highlights, you know, beautiful sand cliffs, valleys, and sand dunes of the Gobi, and then we'll fly back one way back to Ulaanbaatar.
So if I may, Undra, at times, throw my 2 cents in. So Karakoram, some of you, most of you may have heard of it, was the ancient capital of the Mongol Empire during the 13th century, from Chinggis Khan on until his grandson Kublai Khan moved the capital to what's now Beijing. And so basically from Karakoram, where your first stop in the countryside will be, this is where they ruled the largest contiguous empire in the history of the world. This is a famous ancient monastery, Erdinzu, that was built and designed by Zanabazar, or Bogd Khan, who was the last theocratic spiritual ruler of Mongolia. He was the Mongolian version of the Dalai Lama. And actually, people don't know that Tibetan Lama's Buddhism and Mongolian Buddhism are like twins. I had the pleasure of going to Mongolia in 1995 with the Dalai Lama, and I say I go with him, but obviously we arranged some things there, and he gave an initiation. I did convince Richard Gere, the actor, who's been a devout Buddhist for many, many years, to join us on that trip. But the Dalai Lama held my hand and said, Mongolia and Tibet are twins. And you'll see the Buddhist influence. But this last theocratic ruler built just an amazing, he was the Renaissance man of Mongolia. He was a sculptor. He had a unique lost wax method of casting gilded bronzes that are now some of the most famous and most valuable Buddhas in the world. His school of casting bronzes continued for several hundred years. So you'll see pieces of his work. But on a personal note, if he's there and not off meditating and traveling, he's the whole social program, social network in Mongolia. He runs a community center for the disabled. He visits prisoners in the prison to teach them meditation. But the abbot of this monastery, his name is Basan Lama, and he's been a dear friend for well over a decade. So you'll have a chance to see the morning prayers. He was essentially an orphan, and he continues this orphanage. His father was the previous abbot, but I've seen him do some amazing things for people, and so we support him every way we can. I had the good fortune of having him visit in February of 2020. He came for 10 days and ended up staying for 6 days short of 7 months. So I did learn a little bit more about meditation, but you'll get a chance to meet him. We're hoping if he's there. Again, this is a typical site in Hadhoren where they have trees, and only about 10% of Mongolia is forested, but there's beautiful rolling people compared to the Swiss Alps, etc. But again, a vision of many horses, as you'll see along the way. This is Tufkinhid, another monastery that Zanabazar built in the cliffs. And I forgot to mention that he was essentially, the 17th century is when he was in power, and his school of casting continued for 2 centuries after that. Essentially all the way till almost to Stalin's purges.
So this kind of outlines some of the, and this is the view actually. You see the picture is it's a relatively, I would say, probably moderate hike up to this mountain, and it's on top of this hill, the temple, and then you have this beautiful view of the area. So this is what surrounding views from the top of the Tufkinhid Monastery, which is one of the day trips when you're staying in this Karakorum region. And this entire region is really special for Mongolian history. The Orkhon River Valley is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is where the capital of the Mongol Empire was during the time of the Chinggis Khan. And of course, the Chinggis Khan, I think nowadays he's much more well known is not only the warrior and conqueror, but also somebody who had incredible vision for freedom of religion and trade and international relations, so this is really the heart of the Mongol Empire wars, from that period for the next couple centuries. So it is really viewed as the site most important for Mongolian history from that period. So it is recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, that entire valley.
There are 2 great museums in the little village below the mountains in the center of Hadhoren, in the province center there. That one was funded by the Turkish, who have been conducting an archaeological dig there for almost 2 decades now. Another one was funded by the Japanese. They have some really amazing artifacts going back to Chinggis Khan's period. And there's a great book. You'll get reading lists, you'll get pre-departure information and packages from us. But there's a great book written by a gentleman named Jack Weatherford. It's called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. So we've come to learn that, obviously, the Mongol warriors and the Mongol army, I'm not saying he was Mother Teresa, but he certainly, to conquer the largest contiguous empire in the world, he had to have some brains. He was a brilliant military strategist, but he also never enslaved women or children and built more physical bridges over rivers than any other emperor in the world. Even in modern times, they say the amount, because obviously Mongolia and this whole vast expanse, all of China, India, Russia, all the way to the Danube River in Hungary. So this vast empire, the only ones to conquer Persia, essentially. So this treasure trove of artifacts date back to pre-Scythian and pre-Hunu. So there are different artifacts, weapons, and also coins. But it's just an amazing place to go back in time, and yet you can still see unspoiled countryside.
So during this, during our time in this region, we will be staying at our own wilderness camp. So
this is where we're staying for the 3 nights in this region in Karakoram. So this is a camp we set up for exclusively for our clients. And as I mentioned earlier, tourism is relatively undeveloped in Mongolia. So there are regions within Mongolia that still lack airports, hotels, tourist accommodations, and so on. So it's really, the only way and to experience certain regions within Mongolia. So we're going to spend 3 nights here, and it is the expedition style kind of camp you can see, and all the furnishings were made at the Three Camel Lodge.
Just to do a check, Angie, can you still hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So this is accommodations in the central Mongolia, and now we have heading out to the southern part of the country, to the Gobi Desert. And what's amazing also about Mongolia, what the travelers tell us is that, you visit a certain country and then there is a small region, or there is a part of the country that there is particular indigenous culture has survived today and then being practiced. And what you will notice in Mongolia is that once you leave the capital city, actually the nomadic way of life is how people live in the rest of Mongolia. And
Mongolia maintains, it's the largest horse-based nomadic culture that survives in the world. And it's gone through different changes, obviously, after democratization and a market economy was embraced. Literally, it dropped down in mining. Mining is by far the largest industry in Mongolia. In the very south Gobi, you have the largest gold copper mine in the world, Oyu Tolgoi. And it's just amazing. It's almost 2 miles underground. They built this mine, and they depend on that. And coal. Every province of the 21 provinces has coal, and it's high quality coking coal. So that's been a predominant industry. But as we know, the largest industry on earth is tourism, traveling tourism, and hospitality, which embraces everything from a small coffee shop in Mumbai to a lodge in Mongolia. But getting to see these wide open spaces that are relatively untouched, because Mongolia, historically, one of the great challenges for us was to help try to extend the season, because the fall and the spring months are absolutely wonderful and beautiful. And we also would love to see people there more in the winter. I love winters in Mongolia, though it is cold, but it's not colder than Antarctica or the Arctic. So, there's tremendous potential, but there's also a great saying that I've always loved: only in wide open spaces do you truly have vision. And as you can see, the social distancing is not an issue in Mongolia, but you'll get a feel for the landscape.
Sure. So this is the kind of like scenery in the landscapes you will see when we have this overland drive day, really seeing how the countryside and the views change as we go from the central area, kind of rolling steps of Mongolia to the south, to the Gobi Desert of Mongolia.
So you'll go from forest. There are 3 major ecosystems that envelop Mongolia. In the north, you have a continuation of the taiga, the largest forest on earth, from Siberia on down into the upper 10% to 12% of the country. Then the central famous steppes, as Undra mentioned, the grasslands and pastures, where there are also mountains and forests, all the way to the Gobi Desert, one of the northernmost deserts in the world. And of course, the Gobi is very famous amongst paleontologists. It's a paleontological mecca. And so you'll be in the heart of the Gobi and staying at a place I'm very proud of. As I mentioned, I grew up as a carpenter. When we built the Three Camel Lodge, probably it was about a decade after we started Nomadic Expeditions. And the reason we built it was to really be able to share to help Mongolia compete with Africa, India, all the other wonderful places that have great lodges and a high level of service. And obviously, after 70 years of communism and a philosophy that didn't work, the level of accommodations and the level of service was not what I grew up with. And that's one of the things I'm very fortunate about, being able to have a foot in both worlds. Mongolian was the first language I learned in the US, even though I was born in the first Mongolian community. It was my first language. My father taught me, and he taught me about Mongolian culture. And so also growing up in the US and being in construction and building, knowing what people expect. So we built the Three Camel Lodge to help, not to compete with Mongolians, but to help Mongolia compete with the rest of the world. And also maintaining our basic commitment which is an essential part of our existence, about sustainability, about embracing the environment and protecting it, and also obviously helping to preserve tradition and culture and with respect, and also to have a positive community impact where the local community is very much a part of our lodge. You'll see horse breeders, nomads riding up to our lodge. We can't turn them away. They'll come in for a cup of tea. It's the custom. This level of hospitality, as you visit and meet nomadic families, unprompted, unscripted, they'll never turn you away from food or shelter. And this level of hospitality permeates society. If you pick, again, and we quite often do, we'll say if it's time for a break and we see a nomadic family, you can pick where you want to stop and they will never turn you away without offering you tea and food and shelter. You know, you can stay for 10 minutes or 10 days if you help and contribute, but you'll never be turned away. And, you know, it's because one day in this kind of harsh climate, their child is wandering. They know if they see a get or a yurt, that a family will never turn them away from food or shelter. So it's an amazing experience to sense that kind of hospitality. To this day, nomads who go off to tend their herds, which are all free range and travel and graze, because obviously you can tell, even though the Gobi is unique because it's a semi-arid desert, and there are quite a lot of herds of sheep, goats, and camels and horses. They will travel off for 15 kilometers, and that family will prepare a meal and leave it on their table and leave their ger unlocked. So it's quite unique. These are some of the views around Three Camel Lodge. We have our own stables there that we built because Mongolian ponies, essentially, if you're a horse breeder, you may have 200 or 300 horses, and your family of 4 or 5 may only utilizes and rides 4 or 5 horses. So the other horses they own, it's part status. It's just an amazing thing. But they essentially graze out in the winter, all winter, and they go feral. So, you know, socializing horses is important, some degree of horse whispering. That's why we built stables. So when you ride, you have our horses that have become quite familiar with people. The night sky view is somebody kind of took my idea, but I told them about it at a lodge in Montana. And I many years ago, traveling to events. It's well over 15 years ago. I showed them an image of our night skies at the lodge. You'll see the Milky Way there. And I told them I call it our 5 billion star hotel. So the night skies are amazing. So we also have Nadims in the countryside. Nadim everyone knows as the national holiday, but the term actually means celebration. So Nadim means games. And so if you're a lama or you're a herder who's celebrating his daughter's wedding, he'll throw a Nadim and invite the locals. So our spring Nadim at the Three Camel Lodge and our fall Nadim have become quite popular. That's where they compete in the same events as in the capital, in the national Nadim, which has become more like the Olympics with the stadium and many of the events in the stadium. But they compete in the 3 manly sports, quote unquote, of racing, of horse racing, wrestling, and archery. And you know, you'll see these outfits, these kind of skimpy outfits the wrestlers are wearing there. He goes back and you see the young man next to the wrestlers is wearing the traditional Mongolian robe. It's called the del, which is very functional, high collar. Well, the story goes that about 90 years ago in the national competitions, one of the contestants in wrestling defeated all of the other opponents. And it turned out to be a woman. So I guess out of embarrassment, they changed the costume so there wouldn't be any more impersonators in one of the 3 manly sports. But you'll see young women riding and in the national competition in horse racing and in our Nadims as well. And some of the best archers in Mongolia are women. This is the famous Flaming Cliffs, where they discovered the first nest of dinosaur eggs in the world. Roy Chapman Andrews, who was the director of the American Museum of Natural History, who also were my clients for over 2 decades and we still cooperate with them whenever they go there. It's the longest running expedition in history, over 32 years. But Mike Novacek and Mark Norell, who really run the museum, one is the director provost, and the other one is Mark Norell is the director of paleontology. But in 23, Andrews went in one of his 3 expeditions to Mongolia with motor vehicles, Dodge cars and sedans from Beijing. And he was an archaeologist who wore a 10-gallon hat. He was the role model for Indiana Jones. And he drove over 250 miles north into Mongolia looking for the origins of man. That was his theory. And he didn't find any specimens of man, but on his return back to Beijing, after uncovering over 2,000 specimens of different plant life and animal life, he saw these cliffs as the sun was setting and they became bright orange, and he named it the Flaming Cliffs. Well, he made camp there, and the next night he moved his camp onto the cliffs. Excuse me. And when he ran out of when someone had to go outside to tend to nature, and they just literally stepped on the first nest of dinosaur eggs collected in a nest. And so he continued his fascination with Mongolia. And that same museum, 70 years later, discovered an embryo there that was quite famous on the cover of Newsweek and Time. It was a perfect cross-section of these eggs that he discovered, and proved that actually the species they thought were stealing the eggs were actually the same species, something he named Oviraptor, Latin for stealer of eggs, but turned out to be the same species, and it helped to revolutionize paleontological theory, where they found out that it helped contribute to the verification that dinosaurs were much more like birds than they were cold-blooded reptiles. They actually nursed their nests or nurtured their nests and were much more like birds. In fact, it changed many of the exhibits in the West, where they used to have the T-Rex would be standing up erect. And now you'll see all the exhibits, major exhibits would change where their tails are parallel with the ground. And if you ever watch a bird running across the lawn or the grass, its tails are parallel with the ground for balance or ballast. So it's an interesting thing to be able to come to the cliffs and look the same as they have. This brings us to the Three Cam Lodge. Being a carpenter, I read a book on Mongolian architecture. So I read a book on Mongolian architecture when I was a teenager by a famous author named Chultum. And so I wanted to design something that maintained a commitment to the architecture, historic architecture. So it's built in the Suma style, which means temple. And all of the roof here is all mortise and tenon, no nails. And we quarried the stone by hand. We have 5 different septic systems that are with leach fields. So, and the water, the aquifer was over 130 meters for our first well. We even made the clay tiles on the roof by hand. We made our own molds. In fact, on the fascias, on the ends, when you get there, you'll see 3 camels embossed. In our molds, we carved 3 camels. And so I tell people we did it to confuse archaeologists several hundred years from now, because when they see the remnants of our bar, they'll wonder if it was a temple or a bar. But this is an amazing place. It's also an amazing haven for animals that people, some of the rarest. The same valley we quarried the stone from, about 2 months ago, one of our top managers and a Mongolian photographer we work with extensively, heard from the local governor about this family, a female and 2 cubs, baby snow leopards that had been born. So we went to the same rock quarry valley that is about 26 kilometers from our lodge, and we got a few shots of our baby, the snow leopard cubs with their mother. I don't think we put those on Instagram. It's kind of a secret we're keeping, because we're very much about protecting these habitats. When you get to Three Camels, you'll also see the new kennels. We have the Mongol Bunker Project. It's called the Mongolian Bunker Project, which was started by a gentleman from Connecticut, Bruce Elfstrom, where he's helping to preserve the ancient working dog, the Mongolian Bunker, they call it, which is, other people know it as the Mongolian Mastiff, which is genetically identical to the Tibetan Mastiff. And so we just had 3 new puppies. And the plan is that we will be raising the puppies with baby goats and sheep. And then in turn, we then give them to local herding families to help protect their herds at night from predators like wolves and snow leopards, which again prevents the herders from having to go out and hunt them. Even though the snow leopard is protected, these people are living in harmony with nature. If an animal or a carnivore comes and eats their sheep and goats, they'll probably go out and hunt it just to protect their livelihood. But so the dogs are a brand new project that it's been going on with Barbus, our company mascot. We found him a mate through the Mongolian Bunker Project, and we built brand new kennels. So if you go on our Instagram, Nomadic Expeditions Instagram, there's some images of the new puppies. So again, this was built all by Mongolians, and most of the interior furnishings in the gears are done all by hand. We've tried to maintain, those are camel hair or cashmere blankets. We do have some Egyptian cotton linen sheets and things for the comforts, but every get has a saddle. That's the main lodge building, all post and beam, as I was telling you, and the roof built without nails, mortise and tenon. And we've tried to maintain this commitment. Even the main dining room, as you see on the lower right-hand corner, is all built in a Mongolian Geta style. You'll see that we have the ensuite showers, all made with the same stone we quarried from Hutskite, the little valley nearby. I was very proud of the fixtures because I think this was the first matching bathroom fixtures in the country. This was before the Shangri-La was built. I'm very proud of our chef. It's a story, well, not unlike Undra's, but our chef was a dishwasher 10 years ago, and she worked at the Three Camel Lodge. And I've been very fortunate. My cousins worked for the Four Seasons in New York for 30 years now, almost. And a variety of different chefs. We've even hosted a French Michelin chef at the lodge. So I've had chefs come and teach our staff about cooking and service. And so we've been able to create something that people never expected in Mongolia. And we're always really pleased to surprise them. You guys able to hear that? Or Angie, can one of you guys?
Yeah, we did hear it. Thank you. It was beautiful.
It was,
We've got certain, as I was telling you about our involvement with conservation and sustainability, we were one of the founding members of the National Geographic Unique Lodges program, Unique Lodges of the World program. I'm sorry to say, with all the volatility in COVID, that they actually stopped the program. December 31st was the end. But I'm really proud and happy to tell you about a new initiative with Preferred Hotel Group. And they've launched, they've basically absorbed a company called Beyond Green Travel that was started and founded by a gentleman named Costas Christ. Back in 1987, he was a co-founder and coined the term ecotourism. He started the International Ecotourism Society. He was also Peace Corps director in Kenya for a number of years, I think back during the early 90s. He's lived in Africa for 14 years, but he's been all over the world. He's virtuoso, was a director or not director, he was their sustainability officer and a consultant to them on sustainability. He's advised governments all over the world. So his organization, Beyond Green Travel, was absorbed by the Preferred Hotel Group, and they've launched the Beyond Green collection of lodges. And they really have made a serious commitment, which National Geographic, because of the management changes, the different ownership, Disney, Murdoch's, they kind of fell by the wayside in their commitment. I think they went through some management upheavals. But Preferred has made an amazing commitment, and they feel that this is where all hotels and lodges throughout the world should embrace these standards, which require audits. You have to adhere to the basic principles, but you also examine everything from sewage. We haven't had single-use plastic at our lodge for several years now. Every guest who arrives receives a stainless steel cup. We have watering stations throughout the lodge that you can fill up with water. I mean, about community, you saw the little children performers there. We've been sponsoring that group of that's from the Hunhunger School. It's the only local school in the countryside of Mongolia that children study their regular curriculum, and they also study the traditional instruments, dance, song, music, and it's just an amazing group. A husband and wife team started this school many years ago, and we've been well over a decade, and I'm really proud that Nomadic Expeditions and Three Camel Lodge together was able to send these children, I think it was 3 years ago, to the International Children's Music Festival in Turkey, in Ankara, Turkey. So, giving people an opportunity in Mongolia and sharing, and really that's what it's about. This has never been a source of income or personal economic benefit for me, but it's been rewarding in so many ways that are much more valuable. And I think as clients come, I'm really thrilled that we've been able to share this over almost 30 years, and since 1992 with Nomadic Expeditions, to share with literally thousands of clients over all those years, Mongolia. And it's truly infectious once they come. We have two clients that are taught, and both of them have been to over 100 nations, and they've both come back to Mongolia. They don't know each other. They both have come back to Mongolia 9 times. It's one of those places that has so many different aspects and different ecosystems and different cultures within the culture. And so I really look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah, and another region of Mongolia that actually everything you've seen so far is our main itinerary, our core itinerary, and we also, did want to offer an opportunity to see a completely different part of Mongolia, Western Mongolia, which we're offering is an extension trip. So it will be before the main trip and going out to completely different ecosystem region within Mongolia for 3 nights and meeting and interacting golden eagle falconers. And there has been a lot of press. I think New York Times actually just also published today, yesterday morning article.
2 days ago, I think.
Journalists who came out to this region of Mongolia and did a series of photography.
So this area is the Western Altai. It's the Bayan Ulgi is the westernmost province of Mongolia. And Mongolia is almost 1,500 miles in length, almost half the width of the United States. And the westernmost province literally is where Mongolia, China, Russia, and Kazakhstan meet. It's separated from Kazakhstan. Well, it connects essentially, but it's separated from Kazakhstan by about 40 kilometers of Russian territory. So these 4 countries almost converge there. As Linda was telling you, the Kazakhs that live there, these are ethnic Kazakhs. They've been there since the 1800s. And just as the Buddhism went through the Stalinist purges in the 30s, where they tried to destroy monasteries. Probably over 2,000 monasteries were destroyed, and over 100,000 monks were killed. In Kazakhstan, the Muslim faith was under attack, and the mosques were destroyed, and cultural things were suppressed. The communist philosophy under Stalin was that they didn't recognize any national identity besides the state and the communist way of life. So Genghis Khan, Chinggis Khan as we call him, could not be recognized. There were no images of him that were legal to be displayed. So this was suppressed, and certainly Buddhism was suppressed. In Kazakhstan, they abolished basically eagle hunting and also the Muslim faith. And you know, it's an interesting thing because eagle hunting, as Undra mentioned, falconry exists in many, many lands throughout the world. But falcons are quite different. This is the last culture that historically trained eagles to hunt. I'm not a hunter, it's just my upbringing, but it's the tradition. And so in 1999, when I was out there and probably a few too many cocktails with our local Kazakh cohorts, we came up with the concept about preserving this tradition because there were only 20 or 30 families with eagles left in the province. And that meant in the world, because in Kazakhstan, it was non-existent at that time. So we came up with the idea, well, I think I pushed it very hard, but it came up with my colleagues there, the idea of having a festival at the first weekend of every October. And it was designed for the locals. There's been a lot of talk about tourism. You've got to think back in 1999, even Mongolia still remains one of the fewest tourist destinations. To our benefit, I think, without the infrastructure, going overland, we have comfortable Toyota Land Cruisers. We can see the territory. But to be able to go to places like this, to see a lake the size of Tahoe with 5,000 demoiselle cranes and not another human, maybe one nomadic family there, is just an amazing feeling to be in these unspoiled places. But this tradition survived, and I've got to say the festival grew to be 300 or 400 participants now that have eagles. So of course, being a conservationist, I'm actually a board member of the Peregrine Fund based in Boise, Idaho, and I'm also a board member of the Captain Planet Foundation. Two great organizations. The Peregrine Fund, if any of you are familiar, saved the peregrine falcon from extinction. It was vanishing because of DDT and the fragility of the eggshells and the eggs. And they were saved by actually bringing them to urban areas and canyons where they had plenty of pigeons. And so there were nests on tops of skyscrapers in New York and in Philadelphia, Atlantic City. And so it's just quite an amazing story. Because of the growth of the popularity of this festival, we are really proud working with a Mongolian biologist who the Peregrine Fund supported in getting his master's degree 20 years ago in Idaho. He'll be leading this conservation effort. We're funding a census of the eagles and a whole biological study that'll be a 5-year program to help determine the health. And Kazakhs will release these eagles when they're 6 or 7 years old, traditionally back to the wild, and they preserve its hunting instincts, so they never take that away from them by periodically going on hunts with them. So back in a century ago, you'll see most of the Kazakhs are wearing anything from mink, sable, ermine, and they use the eagles to knock out wolves and foxes. So their hats are mostly made with fox fur, fox pelts. Now, the whole fur trade is obviously the Inuits and First Nationers in Canada and Eskimos in the Arctic all have experienced the fur trade dropping off, but they used it for subsistence. So we started the festival to preserve a tradition and for them to have local pride, and it's an amazing event. But we also have to be conscious of the effects it has on the eagle and its population, and also trying to disseminate the proper information about releasing the eagles back to the wild. So the Kazakh culture is quite different. Even the geras, the yurts are made differently. You'll see they make them from bent wood branches, and Mongolians will use a straight pole. So whenever you see a Kazakh gera, you'll see the edges of the yurt where the wall meets the roof is rounded. But it's an amazing, what is common is the level of hospitality because they also live a nomadic existence. So I've known these hunters now. We started the festival. The first festival was actually in 2000. We had our drinks at the Vision in 99. And there's a great movie out called The Eagle Huntress about a young lady when she was 13 years old, Aishul Panch. She's gotten quite a bit of attention, who won the festival. She was the first young lady female to participate and compete. at that time, that year was about 80 hunters. So her eagle, one of the main competitions is when you release the eagle from about 300 meters away on the edge of the mountain. It's always done in the same arena. And the arena is rocks, the white rocks laid on the ground for a field that's about the size of 2 football fields. And as the riders, the eagle is released by someone else from on top of the mountain, their eagle, their trained eagle, and we'll time how fast the eagle will fly from the top of the side of the mountain to the rider. And so she won the competition. I think her eagle was a 1-year-old eagle, which is very rare, a young eagle, and it landed in 5.6 seconds. So the movie, the documentary was done, I think it's Sony Pictures, is on Netflix. She's the one who wins it. It was just amazing. You know, we know that there are Muslim cultures that treat women quite terribly, and it's a fact that they're not regarded. To see these older Kazakhs, the traditional, men's sport, and to see this young lady win and have them with tears in their eyes, it was just a touching moment. It's going on. She's become quite a star in Mongolia. But what's most important is that this culture became another source of pride when it was just something kind of, the few eagles that were left were sort of status symbols. Many of them didn't even try to take them out on hunts and didn't preserve their native skills. That's how they live off of rabbits and small rodents. And so, it's something we have to be conscious of, the whole ecosystem and the balance. But that's gives you some insight into how we operate as a company. It's about core values. It is about the local community. It's also about these animals and protecting their welfare, and about our impact. And clearly we have to try to tread as lightly as possible. And if we're going to make a difference, it should be a positive one. We should make on the environment as well as the culture and on people's livelihoods. I'm proud when you see Mongolians making our furniture. I mean, yes, there are many things that have to be imported, but we try to do it as little as possible. I don't know how we're doing for time, but
we probably did go a little bit over, but I would like to leave some time for questions.
So maybe we'll hand it back over to you, Angie.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, a couple of the questions that came up this evening, one of them is specifically, and possibly it would be in October, but is there an opportunity for interactions with the falcons or eagle hunters and that type of thing? Can you tell us a little bit about what that might be like?
No doubt.
Absolutely, that is the highlight. I mean, the extension trip will take you to a completely different region of Mongolia, not only in terms of the ecosystem and the nature, but then also culture, right? So the Kazakh, we were spending actually the entire day with the golden eagle hunters family. So we will get to know them in depth and spend the day really learning about how do they train the eagles and how, what are the techniques they use, how long they've been training the eagles and so on, and then do the demonstrations. So we will get like intimate and in-depth kind of interaction with what that lifestyle is like, and how do they kind of how do they sustain it, and how do they prepare for competitions as far as the festival goes. But you will get a very good intimate kind of understanding interaction of the what the falconry tradition involves. And
it's very open. I mean, our guides are tremendous, and they'll help facilitate that. But you'll see, you're going to be, for example, Bainulgi, that province is made up of 12 Sums. Sums are small townships, and they're very tribal in nature. These guys, when they come to compete, they're coming from their township. And every year I go, being the word founder and funder have only one letter difference. So I founded it. Guess what? We've been funding it for 20 years, 22 years. So it's been a pleasure because I've come to know these hunters from all of the 12 provinces. And then we'd add a different award each year because we're putting up the prize money. And so we gave for the oldest hunter and whoever traveled the farthest. We had one year an 88-year-old hunter who, by the way, rode 190 kilometers on horseback to come to the festival. By the time he arrived, he had a couple of foxes strapped to his saddle that he hunted. And so it's just seeing these. And, you know, the farthest was 225 kilometers, one of the very farthest one was by the, you know, Chinese-Kazakhstan border. You know, so it's just amazing seeing them. And then you'll quite often see young girls. Now, Ashopan, since she won that in 2015, I think it was, young girls now compete, but you'll see very toddlers with falcons. So a falcon will grow to be 3.5 pounds with a 4.5 foot wingspan if it's a full grown falcon. The golden eagle is one of the largest species of eagles in the world. It has a 7-foot plus wingspan when it's fully grown and can weigh up to 14 to 15 pounds. So 15 pounds is about the size of a bowling ball, a weight of a bowling ball. So imagine an eagle, and people, how do they hunt wolves and foxes? It's like satellite triangulation. We always had it in October because there would be snow on the ground. Global warming has changed it. Some years we've got snow, it gets a little chilly in October when the festival is. Some years it's been 75, 80 degrees, so it's crazy. But we used to do it because the hunter will have the eagle with its hood on, and if he sees tracks and he's hunting, he's obviously hunting for game like he did in the old days, the mountainous terrain, the eagle would be released once they saw tracks, and it would go up, it goes up about 100 feet and circles and spots the game, and then it goes into its swoop. And this is where the hunter knows to direct his course on horseback, because he'll see exactly, so it's a triangulation form of navigation, and he zooms it, but the eagle will come down and he can reach up to 70 miles an hour or even and faster as it goes into the swoop, and it extends its talent and literally will knock out a wolf, a full-grown wolf. Now, occasionally you'll see an eagle with only one leg, because, you know, wolves and foxes have been known to be quite clever. Even my cat used to catch a mockingbird or two when it was getting strafed in the driveway. So you think about it, a golden eagle whose beak is, and I've been bitten up by a pet parakeet as well, and it smarted pretty good, but his beak was not a fraction of the size of the golden eagle. So they're quite amazing animals. You'll be so immersed, and the families there are just unbelievable. So you'll go from seeing little kids with falcons to them growing up to train eagles. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But no, clearly, and any other questions?
Yeah, John, so I have a couple of questions from women, of course, about clothing and laundry. How would you dress, and how different for Ulaanbaatar versus in the country?
The famous answer is layer, right? Bring layers. but it's unfortunately it's the truth. But Ulaanbaatar, I mean, Ulaanbaatar is a modern city. I mean, if you guys have the time, how many nights in Ulaanbaatar?
We have 2 nights in the beginning and 1 night at the end.
So
the main trip.
If you really want to get a cultural mix, so these Undra and our team, they surprised me. I had my birthday there. What is it? 2 years ago? 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago. Now, 2019 in July. And so we had a great evening with the kids from the school that we supported. Came out and they surprised me. We were out by the Flaming Cliffs at the sunset. And I had a dear friend of mine who works with the World Bank, but he wrote a great book on Mongolia's wild heritage in 1996. So Chris, and I hadn't seen him in years, and his son was on the same day as me, birthday, and he was also the same lunar year. So he was obviously, the son was 48 years younger than me. But anyway, we had this party. I go back to the lodge with everyone, and I was getting ready to go back maybe after a nightcap and go settle down. I went to my camp, and I came back, and there was a 4-piece jazz ensemble from all Mongolians, never been out of Mongolia, had never been to the US, playing this young lady, Jojo, sang Ella Fitzgerald like you would, scat music, and they had a great trump. I mean, literally, so they remember one of the performers at the Fat Cat Club, a new jazz club in Mongolia in Ulaanbaatar. So it's quite diverse, like any other city. Around that time of the year, we're talking about June, late June. So late June, it could be, it's not, so you're not, I would take a gamble to say you're not going to need any down clothing or anything like that. If you bring a few layers and things, you know, I think, and as far as going out in the city, it's just like any other metropolitan area. We've got potential, and I don't know how much free time there is, but, you know, we've got the state opera
Pretty comfortable
there.
clothing, and then in countryside, like expedition style, you know, comfortable.
And, you know, if you've got a small, lighter, you know, I wear, you know, winter, but I'm Mongolian. So winter Mongolia can get to -.
In terms of laundry question, of course, in the capital city, Shangri-La, it has a laundry service.
Right.
And the only place I think we don't have is going to be when we, in the remote location, like at our wilderness camps in Karakoram, or on the extension trip. At the Three Camel Lodge, we have a laundry service.
We have a laundry service at Three Camel Lodge. Your 3 nights in the one place.
So then on the main trip, when we are in Karakoram, when we have 3 nights, we have no laundry facility, and then once we get down to the lodge, Three Camel Lodge, then we will have.
And what about the extension?
The extension, I mean, we going out to the far western Mongolia only for 3 nights, so I would say just we'll bring enough clothes for 3 nights.
But we
3 days.
So I'm for many decades of traveling, it's the quick dry, breathable stuff is pretty easy to scrub up, and our guys will take care of things in a pinch. If you need something and all you have to do is ask, we'll make things happen. But as far as regular laundry service, the Three Camel Lodge has that. It helps to have 5 different septic systems. That's why, and we've got 2 wells. So, I mean, water is precious. We don't have dry cleaning at the Three Camel Lodge, so we don't use any chemical processes. The Shangri-La, I believe, has dry cleaning and all the conveniences that you would expect in any other 5-star hotel. And it really is, Shangri-La is the only 5-star hotel in the capital. But ours is a 5 billion star hotel in the Gobi. So.
How about communications? How, obviously, us Americans are not going to do well speaking Mongolian very quickly. Will we be able to communicate?
Well, you'd be surprised. English is the most popular language studied in Mongolia. It's been that way and you'll be surprised. You'll find English-speaking people all over the capital. If they happen to be, and all of the stores will have someone. If you go to the State Department store, we still call it that. It's a private enterprise, but it was the historic State Department store going back to the communist times. No, English, and our guides will be available. If someone wants to have a shopping trip, we'll arrange for a free time. We had the first guide training program, as I think I told you years ago. It was something I wanted to show to people that, and UNDRA, we've had every year we bring, COVID put a stop to that, obviously, because temporarily, but we always bring, whether it be our housekeeping staff to different countries. UNDRA had the great pleasure of taking one of our guide managers and one of our lodge managers to Africa. I was at a charity auction for the Explorers Club. I'm also an Explorers Club member. And so I've been on an Africa trip to East Africa, to Botswana, I think, in Botswana, and to South Africa, of course. And so we have friends there from 30 years in tourism. So UNDRA got to go to Grootbos, and we were good friends with them. They were part of National Geographic's Unique Lodges. And I thought it would be a great thing to have people work from a lodge in Mongolia to go to a lodge in Africa. And vice versa, they have an open invitation to come back to Mongolia, and then COVID hit. So, getting to share the world with our guides is really important. And we have multiple languages also. Russian's not a problem, but I mean, we have Portuguese, Spanish speaking, so we can arrange different things like that. But no, you won't have any problems. But if you wander off on your own, you'll get by. I would say the same rules would apply. And as far as the clothing layering, it's like I said, in the metropolitan area, you can see this is how I dress at my work, because neither construction nor especially when there are hardly any clients at all, but I'm pretty casual. But because of the board memberships and some of the other things I have to do, so bringing a sport jacket, and for ladies dress under, you can.
I think for city, definitely,
The famous black cocktail dress, right, that works for anything. But layering, I think, as far as comfort and warmth, great walking shoes, for whether it be for trekking and for city walking, I think is essential, but as far as linguistically, you'll be able to get by. Kashmir, Mongolia is the largest, because if I count Inner Mongolia, without a doubt, the largest producers of cashmere in the world is Mongolia, both inner and outer. But of course, the inner part is China now. And so they really kind of have some influence over the market. But Mongolian cashmere, they have great Goyo and Gobi, the Gobi factory. So you'll get cashmere at quite a good bargain there, I think. So, the small shops and, handicrafts, that's what we try to focus on. That's what our shop at the lodge has, a lot of local products. That's what even our staff, these winter months, I'm proud that it's been very difficult. Winter's had a great challenge with this because obviously we know we're all suffering in this industry. We're the hardest hit, the largest industry in the world's hardest hit. But, our staff, our head of housekeeping is Jen. She learned it because our director of operations loaned it to me. So they started, I don't know if anyone's heard of needle felting. Needle felting is taking wool, whether it be sheep wool or cashmere goat wool, and with a series of needles, you can mold and shape them. So our team has been making, the ladies have, and some of the guys, some of our guards at the lodge, they've been making, you can literally make animals, it's amazing. So one of them made actually a tiny mastiff, Barbus, our dog. I mean, with eyebrows, we call them the four-eyed dogs because they have these blonde stretches of eyebrows, blonde eyebrows. So biologists know that the Mongolian Mastiff, like the Afghan Hound, is one of the predecessors is one of the ancestors of most major breeds of dogs. You'll look at Rottweilers, Dobermans, you'll see that same the blonde eyebrows, So it's some of the features you'll see. But I'm sorry, my answers take much longer than the questions.
No, that's great, Charles. One other little question that came up was, do you encourage people to bring things for the schools or the children?
We have Pack for a Purpose, I think we still work with, and we've been donors, as I said, to the local school. The donations, they've come, there's a variety of things. I'm really pleased to tell you about, we've acted as a philanthropy ourselves, directly Nomadic Expeditions in all these years. But last year we finally applied and got our 501(c) for the Nomadic Foundation. So we've just been doing it as a company. I tell people quite often we're both a conservation organization and a philanthropy disguised as a tour operator, because that's been obviously Windra has to make a living, but I've done okay with the carpentry business that I grew up in the US. And there's a saying that you have to have a mind to earn money, but you have to have a heart to spend it. So, giving back is important. That's been, and Mongolia's rewarded me in so many ways. It's helped me really embrace my ancestry and where I came from. And at the same time also introduce my Mongolian colleagues and this whole generation. So the legacy is about introducing them to Americans, because I still think America's the greatest country in the world. And that's where I was born and raised. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be in life, to be able to share two places that you love and people that you love from both places. So it's great.
And then we can also, for travelers that, they wish, we will put together a list of suggestions. We do like to put, list of what useful items it's going to be, for nomadic families that we will visit, for local school that we're going to visit. So
Absolutely.
we'll put together a list of, what the needs are.
They're not bashful with us. We have a list of requests. There might be special projects. Trust me, we just distributed 15 tons of hay and high protein pellets. Literally, what was it, 3 weeks ago? Last week? Last week they got it from Belzunga. Because Mongolia last summer was very bad. No grass. And this winter was quite cold and quite a bit of snowfall. So, they have something called Zud. And then there's black Zud. Zud means drought. But if the drought happens in the summer and fall months when you traditionally get rain, there's no grass underneath the snow. So families will, there have been times where 90% of the domesticated livestock have died in one winter. So I've seen one decade in the mid-90s, they had 3 consecutive years of Zud. So they went from almost 60 million, 50 plus million head of livestock to 6 million in the whole country. So it was devastating. There were carcasses. So we distributed this, and this is the second distribution we made this just to the local families within that township around the lodge, and also in Kharkhorum, and we did that in conjunction with the Lama, because he's a one-man social services in that province, and it's just amazing. You'll see him chant and pray, and he was living in my house in Brielle by the Jersey Shore for almost 7 months. My neighbors, I haven't been home. I travel so much. I built this house. I'm in the building business. So about 6 years ago. He walks, every day he would walk with his monk's robes on. And I met about 6 neighbors I'd never met before because of him. So, but he would go out in my backyard and he would spin and just rotate for an hour, chanting and meditating. And I've been with him where I'd be having a conversation with him, and he literally was not there. I could tell he's an advanced expert at meditation. He was giving, I don't know, do you remember meeting Laura Turner? She may have been Ted's daughter, Laura Turner Seidel. So he was doing Zoom meditations with her. I've taken him to meet Richard Gere, and so he's just an amazing man. So I'm really hoping we'll check the schedule and let him know, because if your clients and your friends come, we've got to make sure he's there, because he's amazing. You'll see it. He sings and chants. It's kind of like Southern Baptist Buddhism. And he's got a great voice. I had him in the offices in New York of Afar magazine a couple of years ago. And he started chanting, and then he went into this chanting, singing version of Buddhist prayer. And every editor came out of their offices. They were all there. It was just really great. I've got a video of that somewhere. So he's just one of those gems in the country that are just amazing. And they're everywhere. When you get to meet herders and talk to them and our translators, it's really incredible. These people are living, I still remember some of my conversations over the last 30 years, when I first got there, when I first met Mongolian, a horse wrangler out in the middle of, it was very close to Hadhoren. And I was sitting there, and here I am, my first trip to the countryside of Mongolia, after I was in the presidential palace for like 6 days. I was going crazy. I have to get out to the countryside. And then I got a tent and a sleeping bag, and I was out there, and it was amazing. I pitched a tent next to this horse breeder with about 50, 60 horses. This is right, 93 or 92 or something. I'll never forget speaking to him in Mongolian and asking him about, what do you eat? And what about vegetables? Grass? Mongolians don't eat grass. Animals eat grass, eat animals. It's quite different now. We have an organic greenhouse, obviously, at the lodge, and it's all farm to table. And I can tell you if people who do eat meat, but we also, everyone from vegan to kosher, we were able to do that. Our chef is amazing. You saw a glimpse of her. Been to the US, and we've had her mentor from the US go to Mongolia, who we're trying to get to come back. There's a salad she makes still named after Marilyn Schlossbeck. Marilyn owns about 7 or 8 restaurants along the New Jersey shore and into New York, I think. So it's kind of an amazing thing to see people give them opportunity and see them rise to the occasion. She cooks for billionaires, literally. Her broccoli soup is unbelievable. Pumpkin pie is not bad either. It's amazing, actually.
Sounds awesome. Jalsa Undra, this has been amazing, and we thank you so much.
Well, we really appreciate the opportunity. And
I feel like I've been there already.
well, you've got to come. I'm hoping you're joining this group.
Yes, Andrew is going to be leading.
Very much so.
There?
And for everybody on the call, we will be sending out the actual itinerary and all of the reading list. And Undra also provided me with several YouTube that I've been watching that are really awesome. And the book that
If you watch
in the making of the modern world is so great. You will just, yeah,
So Jack Weatherford, after I read that book, I had to meet him. So we've been friends for many years.
Oh, great. Awesome.
His wife was a great lady, and she passed away, but she was quite ill. She had multiple illnesses, muscular dystrophy, I believe, and she also had cystic fibrosis. And so she used to come to the 3K Lodge, and she was actually ambulatory. We lifted her, but one of her favorite places was the Gobi. But Jack, he really is an amazing man. And so certainly if he's there, and by the way, I think hearing from your clients, any special interest they have, because there is time,
We'll still tweak absolutely.
We've arranged for, if you have a group there, if there's something of particular interest to them, even if it means to diverge from the group, we'll do it. We'll arrange it. I don't, Mongolia, getting people to come there, I think we really love when people say it's one of the best trips of their lifetime. It's about transformation. I think we've all gone through this amazingly terrible period with obviously this virus, something as close to a plague as I would want to see. And I think helping people break into travel again and offering, and we've been doing this all along. Whenever there's no such thing as impossible, I believe in life. Who would think we would have this kind of, and we've got some wonderful, wonderful people we've met in this industry, including yourself. So I can't wait for you to come. Bring in the whole office.
Here we go. We're going to have a great time. We really appreciate it. And Undra, you put together a great program for us. And we will stay in touch.
Please
Thank you
do.
so
And
much.
sorry you get to meet any of your clients individually, but we're at their disposal and service. And Undra, anytime anybody has a question, if they want to speak to me, but Undra's quite capable, I know, but I'm here, I'm available.
Well, awesome. We may be zooming right into you.
Anytime.
We just so appreciate it, and we'll let everybody get on with their evening now.